A wealthy Roman villa, 150 AD. The household is dealing with a problem. Mice have gotten into the grain stores. Rats are breeding in the walls. The kitchen staff is complaining. But the Romans don't call for a cat. They release a ferret. The small weasel-like creature darts through the villa, squeezing into spaces too small for any cat. Within hours, the rodent problem is under control. The ferret has done its job. This wasn't unusual. While cats were beginning to appear in Roman households by the time of the Empire, ferrets remained the preferred pest controllers. The Greeks and Romans kept ferrets, small weasel-like animals, to kill mice and rats. By the time of the Roman Empire, cats were beginning to replace ferrets as controllers of rodents, but slowly. The Romans had different pets than we have today. Some of the pets included greyhound dogs, ferrets, small monkeys, blackbirds, nightingales, parrots, and other breeds of animals. But the three most popular, ferrets, dogs, and monkeys, topped the list of most popular pets of the Roman Empire. Each served a different purpose: ferrets for pest control, dogs for protection and companionship, monkeys for entertainment and status. This is the story of Roman pets, how they lived alongside their owners, and why the Romans chose animals that might surprise us today. Dogs, the universal favorite. Let's start with the one thing Romans and modern people agree on: dogs. Dogs were perhaps the most common pets in Roman households, especially among the upper class. They were seen as loyal companions and often had specialized roles. But Roman dogs weren't just pets. They were workers, guards, hunters, status symbols. The Romans valued powerful mastiffs and the so-called Indian dogs, which were believed to be a cross between a tiger and a dog. These massive dogs were bred for war and protection. The Molossian breed, ancestors of modern Rottweilers, Great Danes, and Great Pyrenees, were particularly prized as guard dogs. Marcus Terentius Varro, a Roman military officer, wrote the first recorded book about dogs. The poet Gratius also wrote extensively about breeding and training. Dogs mattered to Romans, enough to write entire treatises about them. Roman dog owners tagged their pets. Much like today, dogs were tagged so people could find their animals if they went astray. These weren't microchips. They were collars with identifying information, similar to modern ID tags. These pets not only were cuddly, but protected homes from thieves. Owners were known to chain their dogs to their houses or fences when journeying somewhere to keep their possessions intact. The famous Pompeii mosaic, Cave Canem, Beware of Dog, shows that Romans understood the intimidation factor of a guard dog, and at least one Pompeii dog died heroically. The body of a boy was discovered with his dog lying over him, trying to protect him, perhaps. But Romans didn't just keep large working dogs. Smaller breeds were popular too. The Maltese, though not related to the modern breed, was a lapdog owned mainly by elite women, who kept them in the folds of their tunics. These were companion animals, not workers, pure pets. Romans even cared about dog names. The poet Pliny recommended short dogs' names. Ovid suggested names like Asbolos, Sooty for a black dog, Dorseus, Gazelle for a small, fast dog, Tigris, tiger for a stripy dog, and Ferox, ferocious for a guard dog. Ancient gravestones regularly show pet dogs sitting or lying by the side of their now dead owners. These weren't just animals. They were family. Ferrets, the mouse hunting specialists. Now for the surprising part, ferrets, not cats, were Rome's primary rodent controllers. The Greeks and Romans kept ferrets, small weasel-like animals, to kill mice and rats. They were the pest control solution of choice for centuries. Why ferrets instead of cats? Several reasons. First, ferrets are relentless hunters with bodies designed for chasing prey into burrows and tight spaces. Their lean bodies and curious nature made them an obvious choice for ferreting, which is an actual term used to describe hunting with ferrets. Elsewhere in the empire, ferrets were used to hunt rabbits. In Roman households, they hunted mice and rats. They could squeeze into spaces cats couldn't reach. They were persistent, fearless, and effective. Second, ferrets were already established in Greek and Roman culture before cats arrived. Ferrets are native to Europe. Domestic cats largely came from Egypt, where they were considered sacred animals, and their mouse-catching abilities were appreciated. But cats didn't become widespread in Rome until later. Even though cats were considered sacred animals and their mouse-catching abilities were appreciated, they were not very popular in ancient Rome, at least not as much as dogs. By the time of the Roman Empire, cats were beginning to replace ferrets as controllers of rodents. But this was a gradual process. Romans raised cats as domestic pets starting in the 1st century BC, but ferrets remained common throughout the empire. Cat remains have been found in military forts and outposts. Cats were valuable companions to soldiers because they helped preserve food by exterminating mice and rats. But in civilian households, ferrets often did the same job. Cats weren't popular in ancient Rome, although they were sometimes used to keep the mice and rats away. They had to compete with weasels and ferrets for the title of rodent controller. In fact, Pompeian mosaics show how some Romans viewed cats. While dogs appear in loving contexts, companions to children, protectors of homes, cats appear more utilitarian, functional, rather than beloved. No cats seem to have earned an epitaph like many dogs. They can be found on some funerary stelae, mostly as companions to children, but rarely with the emotional tributes given to dogs. Ferrets, by contrast, were practical, effective, and perfectly suited to Roman needs. They did their job. They didn't require the same level of care as dogs, and they handled the rodent problem efficiently. Monkeys, entertainment, and status. The third most popular Roman pet? Monkeys. This seems bizarre to modern sensibilities. Monkeys are wild animals, difficult to care for, unpredictable, but to Romans, they were entertainment. Monkeys seem to have been popular pets among the Romans, macaques to be exact, although skeletons of other species also appear as archaeological evidence. And surprisingly, it seems that they were not an indicator of social status alone. Monkey skeletons are found throughout the Mediterranean, suggesting they were more widespread than just among the elite. But wealthy Romans definitely kept monkeys as status symbols. Some notables kept monkeys in their homes, even though they were rather undesirable pets. Undesirable how? Well, monkeys are destructive. The Roman historian Cassius Dio recorded that once a monkey entered the temple of the goddess Ceres and destroyed everything in it, and did it during the service. Yet Romans found them fascinating, amusing, worth the trouble. According to ancient sources, monkeys were dressed up like soldiers and rode in small chariots pulled by goats. They were taught to play musical instruments. They performed tricks at banquets. One ancient writer describes seeing a monkey at spring festivals wearing a straw hat and Phrygian tunic. Philostratus describes a hippodrome built for a young prince, where small Meletian dogs yoked to chariots were driven by apes. Galen describes pet apes playing together with young boys. This wasn't cruelty, at least not by Roman standards. This was entertainment. Monkeys were seen as amusing, playful, almost human-like in their behavior. The custom of keeping apes as pets was widespread in ancient times, perhaps more so than at the present, according to scholar W.C. McDermott in his work, The Ape in Antiquity. Most ancient pet apes were Barbary apes and Ethiopian monkeys. Cicero mentions that the kings of the Molossi and Epirus had apes in deliciis, as favorites or delights. Plautus's play Miles Gloriosus features a pet ape 5 times. These animals were woven into Roman culture. One ancient text tells the story of a pharmacist who began to love an ape. Terracotta lamps show jugglers with their trained apes. Art depicts apes performing, playing, entertaining. Monkeys were expensive, exotic, and difficult, but for Romans who could afford them, they were worth it. Birds, fish, and the exotic. Beyond the big 3, Romans kept a remarkable variety of other pets. Birds were extremely popular. Especially popular were crows, magpies, and starlings, which can be taught to talk, and nightingales and blackbirds, which have beautiful songs. Talking birds were seen as useful for entertainment and attracting attention. Wealthy Romans would teach parrots to speak. They'd keep songbirds in elaborate cages. Peacocks, with their spectacular plumage, were status symbols. Unfortunately, many pet birds ended up on the dinner table. In a contradiction often seen in the treatment of ancient Roman animals, many pets were also considered a delicacy, and a pet fish or parrot might eventually end up on the table. Parrots' tongues were a particular delicacy. The Romans raised fish in fish ponds, both for food and as pets. Some Roman estates had large outdoor enclosures called vivaria that housed birds and larger animals such as antelope, wild pigs, and deer. Emperor Tiberius loved snakes. Domitian and Caracalla kept lions. Emperor Valentinian I had 2 she-bears he named Golden Crumb and Innocence. He loved one so much, he eventually released it into the wild. Emperor Nero let both tame and wild animals roam freely within the grounds of his golden house. And then there's Incitatus, Emperor Caligula's horse. The historian Suetonius tells us that Incitatus had his own marble stable with an ivory manger, 18 servants, a diet of oats mixed with gold flakes, and would attend social gatherings. Caligula even promised to appoint the horse as consul. Romans didn't just keep pets, they celebrated them, pampered them, and sometimes ate them. The relationship was complicated. What it reveals. Roman pet culture reveals several things about their society. First, practicality mattered. Ferrets weren't kept because they were cute. They were kept because they killed rodents. Dogs guarded property and herded animals. Even monkeys served a purpose, entertainment and status display. Second, status was performed through possessions, including animals. Exotic pets signaled wealth and power. Owning a monkey, a peacock, or a lion meant you could afford to maintain something impractical and expensive. Third, Romans formed genuine emotional bonds with their pets, especially dogs. The gravestones, the epitaphs, the art depicting children with puppies, these show real affection. According to Plato, dogs are valuable pets as they provide unconditional love and affection. But fourth, Romans also maintained a pragmatic distance. Pets might end up as food. Working animals were respected but replaceable. The line between pet and livestock was thinner than in modern culture. The final lesson. So here's what happened. Romans kept ferrets, dogs, and monkeys as their most popular pets. Ferrets hunted rodents. Dogs protected property and provided companionship. Monkeys entertained and displayed wealth. Cats existed but were less common. Birds, fish, and exotic animals filled Roman homes. Some pets were loved, others were eaten. The distinction wasn't always clear. Today we're shocked that Romans ate their pets or that monkeys were dressed up for entertainment. But Romans would be equally shocked by our practices, keeping animals indoors, feeding them specialized food, treating them like children. Pet culture evolves. What seems normal in one era seems bizarre in another. The ferret versus cat choice? That was just Romans being practical. Ferrets worked better. So Romans used ferrets, until cats finally caught up.